Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Helen Bennett. She is a certified health coach and addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the show, Helen.
RJ, it's an absolute joy to be here and to be in India for the first time online. Hopefully, I make it in the real world sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are welcome to India. You are welcome to uh, not just India, but you will be addressing a lot of people in the world through what we will be talking about. We'll be talking about food freedom and beyond. I'm sure it will benefit people not just in India, but a lot of people all across the world. So, Helen, I want to understand. You talk about food freedom. You talk about compulsive eating, dealing with compulsive eating, diet culture, body shaming. Tell us a bit about this. Why you are so passionate about these things? Tell us about yourself so that the audience learn for themselves from you itself. Who exactly Helen Bennett is.
I'm happy to get in there. All right. Well, I'm very passionate about this topic because I currently coach, help a lot of people, men and women all over the world who struggle with losing control with food, whether that's just they're coming home in the evenings and they have best intentions in the world, but they find themselves eating way more than they were expecting to, or whether that's somebody who's binging and purging, struggling with bulimia. And I'm passionate about it because I actually personally struggled. So I have real world lived experience of how frustrating it is to have a mindset of today I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to eat well today. I will not lose control. And then being in a situation where your body is disconnected from your intentions and you just start eating and doing behaviors that I feel so guilty and shameful. And I actually struggled with bulimia. So I struggled with a very extreme version of out of control compulsive eating. And in my case, I was so ashamed of my loss of control that I would then compensate by either over exercising. I loved exercise, but I started to do way too much of it. And in my case, I actually began to throw up my food as well, which is, you can hear that hesitation. It's even hard for me now to speak about it. But my journey now is to be open because sadly, I think there's a lot of people who are feeling ashamed and guilty about their behaviors and out of control, much the way I did. I didn't want to do those behaviors. I was trying to stop, but it's not that easy. And it becomes highly, I even want to use the word addictive, which will be a little controversial. That's fine. But to the point at which no matter how much I wanted to stop, I couldn't seem to until I found a way 20 odd years later of suffering very silently with a lot of this that helped me break free from that compulsion. So I have an extreme version of compulsive eating, but the methods that I use and the things that I stumbled into help people, even if they feel like they just come home in the evenings and they're eating more than they would like. That's where I can help.
Right, Helen. So why do people eat? I mean, you said eating more than they like. It means they like eating, or is it because of some other reason that they are trying to forget? I want to understand what exactly is this compulsive eating. Is it that you want to eat, or is it that you want to forget something else?
That's such a great question. So more than they think they should is probably the word we want to use there, because there's a feeling of I should only eat this much. This is what's healthy. A lot of the people who reach out to me are not uneducated in terms of nutrition. They understand what they should be doing, and yet they're going beyond that repeatedly to the point of maybe feeling excessively full. But what I think you said there was so perfect is, are they trying to forget? And you've actually gone to the heart of where most compulsive overeating lies, is when we're eating beyond fullness, what's going on there? And I sort of describe it, all addiction, although I've probably stolen this description or this description from somebody else. I think of addiction as any behavior or substance that we do repeatedly, despite a sincere desire to stop, that actually serves the purpose of numbing, healing, escaping, forgetting, avoiding really uncomfortable and often very painful emotions. And when we frame it that way and we start to see compulsive eating as an escape or a forgetting, we can be a lot more compassionate with why somebody might be doing that behavior, because it's not easy to sit with pain and just ride it out, And I think that's what a lot of the weight loss industry is missing, because they kind of use the old, you should just be able to stop, just don't do it. But that's kind of like saying, I need you to be in a lot of pain and don't try and escape it, please. And people will find a way to escape pain. And even if they get really good at not eating beyond the fullness in those moments, they might then jump to drinking too much or gambling or social media. So it's actually so important when we realize somebody's compulsively eating to ask that wonderful question, something in the realms of, what are you trying to forget? What are you trying to escape from? If food's not what you actually need because you're full in that moment, what is it that you need? What is the feeling you're trying to flee? So I kind of love that question because you went right to the heart of it.
Right, right, Coach Helen. I'll come to this part. But before that, I want to understand one thing is that how does one differentiate between a foodie and a compulsive eater? How does that?
Oh, what a great question. I've been a chef. And I was actually chefing. I learned to become a chef. I've chefed on wonderful super yachts and cooked incredible food. And that's when I learned the difference. And I love this question. I've never been asked it. But I think a foodie is somebody who appreciates flavor and texture and combinations. And as a chef, one learns to taste with a mindset that is looking for a certain experience. Whereas somebody who's compulsive eating, I think anybody listening to this this is going to land. When we're in a place of overeating compulsively or to escape or numb, we're no longer tasting the food. It's enjoyable. It gives us that hit of pleasure initially, maybe. Not maybe, definitely. That's why we do it, right? But at a certain point, we've disconnected, because what it's done is it served the purpose of numbing. A foodie is present. They're savoring. They're delighting and indulging in a food. And often they will be able to stop easily when they're full, because it's about the experience of the flavors and the textures and all the spices, etc. And that's what a chef does. We have to taste. We're looking for something in the experience. But compulsive eating is disconnection. It's take me out of this place. Just get me away from here. And a lot of people who struggle with binge eating, bulimia, and compulsive eating will say, sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it until it's done. And I wake up and it's like, what was I doing? A bit like when you drive home and you can disconnect and you suddenly get home and you think, I don't even remember that drive. It becomes so automatic and so habituated that it can be hard to even spot when the pattern starts to kick off. And in the case of compulsive eating, the pattern is escape from a feeling. Whereas with a foodie, they're staying present. And in fact, in many ways, one of the skills I teach people who are struggling with compulsive eating is they learn to recognize hunger and fullness and differentiate hunger from a binge urge, let's say, is how do we indulge? Let's be present with the food and see if you even enjoy it. Because often when people actually eat the foods they used to binge on, they'll say, you know what, Helen, I don't really even actually like this food so much. Or, wow, I love it until this point, and then the enjoyment drops off. So in some ways, I guess what I train people to do is become discerning, to become foodies, to enjoy food for food's sake, as opposed to just an escape and a numbing.
Right, right, Helen. Now, in some homes, there are sparse eaters. If wife is a sparse eater, and they might view their husband as eaters. I don't know whether compulsive eaters or foodie. The husband will say, I like food, but they will view it differently. How should they be
Yeah.
kind to their husbands or whoever, their partners, in terms of food, whereas also making sure that they are not eating as a compulsive eater, but being the foodie that they are? How do you keep that balance, calibrate your eye on all these things that is happening at home, because it's about the health of the other person?
Again, another brilliant question. It's so important, this, because I think people who don't struggle with using food as their way of escaping and numbing and all of those things, really can't necessarily understand, and how could they, because they've not lived that experience, what it is to be using food for something other than eating. So I think people, when they find themselves overeating, might say, I'm just a foodie. I've heard that actually a few times. But actually, when we look at it, we realize that those people who might say, I'm a foodie, are actually using an excuse to try and, because they don't know what's going on, and maybe they don't understand why they're eating more than they, beyond hunger. So if they're not actually foodies and it's not about savoring the experience, they find themselves compulsively eating. They might use I'm a foodie as an excuse because they don't actually know how to stop. So I love this question, because this conversation will give people who may be living with somebody who's struggling with a bit of compulsive eating a bit of awareness that perhaps when they're overeating, there's something else going on. Perhaps they're miserable at work. Maybe they're struggling with whatever. And when I see somebody who is who's clearly obese or overweight, I used to have a lot of judgment around that. I used to assume overweight meant lazy and all the negative things. And as I've done this work more and more, I've realized that oftentimes, and I think the guest that you've just had on, and if anybody hasn't watched that, I'd recommend it. Jason, what was his name? Jason Stanley. He comes at the same thing from a different angle. It's oftentimes that use of food that goes beyond what we need for just survival, goes right back to childhood. Now, what I want to just add to what he said, because much of that is true, is the kind of clients I work with, oftentimes when we root it back, have been shamed for their body size. And so what happens is, and this is so important, I can't emphasize it enough, especially in the culture that we live today, that's all about, you've got to be on a diet and you need to be losing weight, and weight loss is the epitome of self-worth. When we are shamed for our body size and then we attempt weight loss, most people then go to a highly restrictive, extreme kind of 8-week shred. But the body sees that massive change in caloric intake as a problem, as starvation. And it responds with, and this goes way beyond the conscious mind, the subconscious brain goes into survival. And if you're even thinking, I need to lose weight, I need to be on a diet, I'm going to restrict on Monday, and it's perfect timing for this conversation because it's Easter weekend. A lot of people will be thinking, on Monday, I'm going to get back to my diet. The brain hears that is, on Monday, I'm going to starve you again. And can you imagine how dangerous that is for a brain that's designed to survive? The brain goes, eat everything now, because otherwise we are going to starve come Monday. So the mindset as we do this work is let's let go of this idea that we're not enough in the bodies that we're in. And let's let go of this idea that we have to massively lose weight. Let's just try and be present with our experience with food. And for the person who's witnessing somebody compulsively eating, maybe to take a moment and go, shaming them on their food choices, shaming them on their body shape will probably make things worse, because what will they do? They'll go to start dieting, because everybody wants to be loved and accepted. So if somebody in my family is shaming my food choices or shaming my body, I'm going to immediately want to try and lose that weight so I can be loved and accepted. But the bad news is, when we do that, we tend to drive up a primal survival desire to eat more, because your body's expecting starvation. So it's designed to get you to eat no matter what you're thinking. And I think so many of my clients struggle with that. There was either an actual shaming event in their childhood where they felt they were too big to be loved, body size, or they came up, and this is my story, I couldn't understand why my father didn't love me and why my father was so angry and mean. And then when I kind of became a teenager, I didn't get a boyfriend. So then I thought, men don't love me. What's wrong with me? And my solution in my head, I was just a little girl, was it must be my body. If I could be thinner, then I would be loved. And so I went in it from, I'm going to diet, even though my body was absolutely fine. I didn't know that. I just made an assumption and I started dieting. And that, of course, kicked off this unbelievable primal urge to just eat. So the summary of all of that is, when we shame people for their food choices, or we shame them for overeating, we shame them for their body size, it's far more powerful to come at it from a place of compassion, which might look something like, is there something going on? What are you feeling? You know, this is all going to sound a bit cheesy, and I'm sure in your own relationships, one can do this a lot more in a way that wouldn't sound like we're trying to coach them. But instead of looking at it as like, oh, they're so lazy, what's wrong with them? Or they're so fat, or they just don't care. Maybe we look at it as like, wow, maybe something's going on for them that's a lot deeper than just what they're eating. And maybe they want to stop, but actually don't know how because they're trapped in a bit of a vicious cycle. Did that make
Right.
sense? I hope I explained that.
Yes,
It was a
yes,
big
yes,
topic.
indeed. Otherwise, I would be interrupting. I was listening and trying to understand, because that is what people want to understand from the expert who would want to listen to. I'm not an expert on this. I only can try and understand from a common person's perspective, because I don't know it. And it's the same with a lot of people who would like to know from experts like you. So let's understand compulsive eating a bit more. You talked about that at different stages, people want to forget something else, so you get down to eating. How does it impact children? What are they worried about that they want to forget and they get down to eating? Or is it that they love food and they want to have more of it because they are exploring the world? So they want to explore food. What about adults? How do you see that in terms of their compulsive eating? And then at the older generation, say 55 plus, if that is the case, who is suffering most of because of this compulsive eating?
You know, the thing is, food is pleasurable and it's designed to be something we seek out. And because it gives us pleasure, it's a very easy place to go to when we're feeling something uncomfortable, to make us feel a bit better. We feel lonely, we feel sad, we feel not enough. Even if we feel that we're unattractive, we might even use food, which will make the problem worse maybe. But, you know, the food is easy access. It makes us feel good when we eat it. And then we have all these associations from childhood. And I mean, it's Easter weekend. Families get together. There's love, there's connection. So our mindset is chocolate is love, you know. And so adults are really just grown up with children who've got all that association of food being something pleasurable and food being associated with love and connection, that they might want to reach to food in those moments. But here's the thing. Everybody has something that they go to alleviate pain. It's an unusual adult who's able to just be in the space of loneliness or shame or anger or frustration and allow their body to express all of that and own it. Because in many ways in the world, we're always creating a personality that we feel will be accepted. Because if I'm feeling anger in this moment, it's probably not appropriate for me to just go and rage unless I'm okay with the rejection and the impacts of that, right? So we learn all the time socially that our emotions need to be kept in check. And that's true to some extent. But at some point, they need to be released. And I think most adults, A, don't even know what emotions they're having, but B, as young children, they were shown those emotions aren't acceptable. Now, women will understand this a lot, is it's not acceptable to be fat. Yeah, you've got to be thin in the Western world. You know, I mean, it's not in every culture for sure. And actually, it wouldn't even matter. Whatever the accepted is, we'll try and fit in. But also, for many women, they'll know, don't speak up. Don't speak your mind. Just keep your opinion to yourself. Don't put down a boundary. Don't say no. And God forbid you should be angry. But the problem is, you know, I mean, children, they get angry, they scream, they shout, they tantrums, you know, it's just so natural. It just comes out of them. But as we grow up, we're taught, no, we can't do those. But the problem is then we bottle it in. And sometimes we eat just to keep pushing it down. So adults are really just grown-up children who've learned to use food as a way to medicate those emotions, and it's very effective. But if they don't use food and they've had a similar experience, they'll use something else: alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever, social media, work. That's another one. And oftentimes, even going on a diet is a way to escape and forget. Because if I can be obsessed with calorie counting and I can be obsessed with doing my workouts and all of those things, then I'm numb and I can forget everything else I'm experiencing. So in some ways, dieting as well can become an addiction and a compulsion. And especially because if you get a bit of weight loss and you get some attention and some compliments, it's something we want as a human being. I want to feel good. I want to feel like I'm appreciated and loved. And if I've lost weight and suddenly everybody notices me, I want that experience again. And I'll keep hunting for that experience. But what we've, very few adults realize that they're even doing it. And it takes this like stepping back and awareness to go, I don't need everybody else's approval, or I love their love. I want their love, but I need to be me. I need to be authentically me. And I'm okay and I love me just as I am. And I don't think many adults do. And that takes a lot of work to get there in this kind of messy, noisy world that we're in. No wonder we reach for food or something just to escape. And actually, I just want to add one last thing. I see a lot of people, and maybe you know people who, or maybe you can relate. When we're busy all day, to-dos, responsibilities, all the things, and you come home in the evening, man, for so many of my clients, the one place they just let go, the one place they can just be a bit naughty, a bit free, a bit rebellious, because all day they've been good. The one place they can do that is with food or alcohol or whatever the thing is. But food is easy and it's socially acceptable and nobody will know. And so that's why it's so pervasive, I think. And that's why I think people carry so much shame, because internally they know something's not right. This doesn't feel good. I'm eating more than I need and I can't seem to stop. But nobody outside is really questioning anything. If anything, they're just shaming them for it. So it's a real nasty catch-22. Where do they get that release? Where do they get that playfulness? Where do they get to just drop responsibility and say, no, I'm not going to do any work for the next 10 minutes. It's hard in the modern world, really hard. But knowing that that's what we're using food for can be a powerful start.
Right, Coach Helen. So let's look at the solutions now.
Yeah.
In terms of you talk about different aspects of this, solutions to people, especially one solution you talk about, tool or technique that you use in your coaching sessions that yields significant results. Tell us about that.
Or if I had to pick just one that would to really move the needle the most, because I sort of use 4 different key areas of work. But the first one we always start with is learning to listen to our bodies again. So oftentimes people struggling with compulsive eating might say to me, I can't even tell if I'm hungry. I just feel like I'm always hungry. And so the first thing we do is we start reconnecting with those inner signals. What does hunger feel like? Where do we feel it in the body? What does fullness feel like? And can we hear that subtle switch as our body goes, I'm good. And once they start getting good at that, and not only hearing hunger, but also actually honoring what your body asks for. Because in this world of nutritional gurus everywhere, we're being told what to eat instead of actually asking our body, do I want protein today? Do I feel like carbs? And if I do, can I actually eat them without feeling guilty? So it's listening to your tummy, and honoring what it wants, and then getting really good at listening for that little fullness signal. So we start there. And that might sound so easy for anybody who doesn't struggle with this, but somebody who's been losing control with food will be thinking, crikey, that sounds almost impossible. I don't think I've heard my hunger for years. And from there, what's so exciting about once they get that, and that's quite quick to come, believe it or not, because our body's screaming at us all the time. We're just not listening. Once they get good at listening to their body, then all the eating that happens that isn't for hunger and is beyond fullness, that's where we start to do the real work. What's driving that? And for everybody, it's different. But just that first skill of being able to hear our hunger and honor it often changes, creates 80% of the results, where people start going, oh, I can trust my body. Oh, I can hear hunger. I can eat what I want. It's going to be okay.
Absolutely. There's much to learn from you about all these things, about food freedom and beyond, about compulsive eating, about diet culture, about body shaming, and how we can find our way amidst all these issues. But a lot of people would like to understand things directly from you, about you, from you. So what is the best way for them to connect with you, Coach Helen?
I'm on Instagram a lot, so you can find me at Coach Helen Bennett on Instagram. Otherwise, on my website, helenbennett.co. And you can connect with me there, easy peasy. We can set up a free discovery call where we just chat and get to know each other. And I can really get to understand what's going on for you. And we can create a clear path of how to break free of all of that compulsive eating.
Absolutely, absolutely. With all this wisdom and with all this food for thought, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, AJ.